I'm Travis Bader, and this is the Silvercore podcast. Silvercore has been providing its members with the skills and knowledge necessary to be confident and proficient in the outdoors for over 20 years, and we make it easier for people to deepen their connection to the natural world. If you enjoy the positive and educational content we provide, please let others know by sharing, commenting, and following so that you can join in on everything that Silvercore stands for. If you'd like to learn more about becoming a member of the Silvercore Club and community, visit our website at silvercore.ca. All right, you guys are going to make me work for it today. I've got a few guests on the Silvercore podcast, and I like to make sure I get a decent intro for everybody because I view it like somebody coming into your house. You don't ask somebody to come into your house and introduce themselves. You bring them into your house and you introduce them to your guests who are going to be there, and that's exactly what I'm going to attempt to get through with the three of you. I had to cull back some of the accolades just to make this one flow. So today I'm joined by Linda Miller, a competitive shooter who has won medals at the Commonwealth Games, Cuba World Cup, Mexico World Cup, and was the first woman to win the Ontario Lieutenant Governor's Medal for shooting. Retired Captain Keith Cunningham, with over 25 years of experience in the Canadian and U.S. Armed Forces, combat tours of Vietnam, peacekeeping, and counter-sniping operations in Cyprus, and together with Linda, run MilCun Training Centre, and they coach high-level competitive shooters and professionals around the world, and have authored the book Mental Marksmanship, which we've discussed in past episodes of the Silvercore podcast with my friend Ryan Stacy. Finally, retired Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman of the U.S. Army, founder of the Grossman on Truth, author of numerous books, notably on killing, the psychological cost of learning to kill in war and society, and has teamed up with Linda and Keith in their brand new book on hunting, a definitive study of the mind, body, and ecology of the hunter in the modern world. Welcome to the Silvercore podcast, Linda, Keith, and Dave.
Thank you, Travis.
Thanks, Travis. You sound very exciting. I'm really glad you did the intros.
Yes. Hey, it's always easier for somebody else to.
You bet.
So you guys are just wrapping up a week of recording your audiobook for On Hunting, and right now I believe you guys are all in Dave's house in separate rooms. I think we've got all of our technical issues kind of sorted, and there might be a little bit of delay while we're talking here. Hopefully that doesn't interrupt the flow too much, but what I'm really curious about is what was the impetus for the book On Hunting? How did this first come about?
You're up, Dave.
Well, I've had the idea for a long time. I wrote on killing, and it evolved into on combat, the two distinctly different dynamics. But the third leg of understanding human beings is hunting. It's all we did. There's a great quote in the book about if the existence of mankind was 24 hours, right up until the last 6 minutes, all we did was hunt. It's who we are. It's what we were built to do. It's what we were designed to do. And I mentioned it to Linda one time, and I thought, what do you think about co-authoring this book? I've got an outline and a concept. I passed it to Linda, and boom, I'll let her take it from there.
So next, as with most of these things, I had to actually get knowledgeable about hunting because, like most people, I was a hunter, but I really didn't know much more than just how to, ask my gunsmith to keep my gun tuned and go out into the stand and, shoot a deer when it arrived. So I did a lot of reading. I read a couple of hundred books, some of them very old, some of them very new. And it was very interesting to see other people's perspectives on hunting and some of their discomforts. And where I thought it all tied back together again was very, very old times. And my first idea was that old times were back to the gods and goddesses of the great Greek and Roman empires, because they all had, gods and goddesses, usually goddesses of the hunt. And then I realized that that's not old. What's old is Stone Age man, or even earlier, before certainly well before written records and well before a lot of artifacts. And we were hunters all that time. We came from hunting stock, and trying to get an understanding of the depth of that connection drove a lot of my reading. And then, there were other things that Dave had on his wish list, and I think we met them all. He thought that we needed to talk about ethics. So we talked about and did a fair bit of research about how animals behave and what kind of ethics they would have brought to the table before man, and then how early man would have, what ethics they would have, mostly ethics of efficiency, because you can't be spending more calories than you're getting, or you're not going to live. And right through to modern times when we have much more capable killing power, and we need to temper that in order to have a fair and safe hunt. And so then what else did we want to cover, Dave? It was the tools and skills, I think. What's in common across time and around the world, and the types of skills that you need, and the kinds of tools that you're now more or less allowed to use. They're all available to us. We could go back to addle-addles and slingshots, but many jurisdictions you're not allowed to use those for a game hunt. And then we talked about the relationship between some of those skills and processes to other things that you might be knowledgeable in. Police work, military, anything that involves any kind of stalking and tool use, and if need be, then killing. And so we looked at that and the connections. And then finally we looked at what's the place of the hunter in the modern world. Is there a place? And what does that look like? And how does he participate and contribute? And what we found was that because we're all under the skin, all wired to be hunters, that we all can access this incredible depth of history that our little pool of genes has to those pools of genes that are our forebears.
I find that so interesting. And Keith, did you want to chime in on there at all?
I don't know if Dave mentioned it, but the part that kind of perked my ears up was when one time we were at one of Dave's seminars, and he said to Linda, "I'm going to make you famous and rich." And Linda said, "Well, I don't care much about the famous, but I'm very interested in that rich part." And my contribution to the book was pretty much to stay out of Linda's way while she was reading all those 200 and some books. And then throughout the book, we needed campfire stories, and so that's where I came in and wrote several of those campfire stories, which I enjoyed writing, and I certainly enjoyed reading them when we did this audiobook.
There's something just so human about.
Yeah.
Sorry, say again, Dave.
As we were doing the narration, the campfire stories that Keith had written were really the areas that choked us all up. That was so powerful. And then Linda did her homework, but all of the areas I kind of anticipated, the one that came out of nowhere and really was most important was the whole business of sustaining the ecology. And we got the Nairobi, we got the Kenya versus, Linda kind of run with that. I think it's the most important thing in the book, and I didn't see that coming, is where the hunter is really the deep pockets and the great resources to sustain conservation over the years.
Yeah, if I may be so crude, we're the only ones who actually give a damn.
Yeah, hunters.
Hunters. Yeah.
It's not the first time I've heard that. Hunters will quite often be, the bird watchers. They like going out there and watching the birds just like we do, but why aren't they contributing to conservation the same way, right?
Yeah. If they had to buy a hunting license to do it, and pay for a tag for every for every bird that they spotted, they probably wouldn't pursue that sport. And then here are hunters paying vast amounts of money to do what they need to do. But Linda, dive into that Kenya versus Namibia model.
Sorry, was there a question in there for me?
Yeah, can you go ahead and what's happening in Kenya, what's happening in Namibia, and that comparison dynamic?
Yeah. Kenya had a really serious problem decades ago with poaching, and a lot, both for ivory. It was called the Ivory Wars, but there were lots of other victims in what was going on, and there were lots of very powerful parties who were supporting illegal meat trade and any kind of high value ivory or anything like that. And so the government of Kenya said, absolutely no more. We're not going to allow anything to be taken in any kind of hunting or poaching. Well, it's easy to stop hunting because we're all law-abiding and, pay a great deal to hunt. But it's not so easy to stop poaching. Right. So the first thing that happened in Kenya is that the animal population absolutely dropped because there were no hunters, there was no investment in anti-poaching efforts. They took over and they killed. I think the best estimate is something between 70 and 80% of the game in Kenya. Now it has come back a little bit, but they still don't have the kind of funding that hunters had brought, so they're still struggling somewhat. They have a booming business in safaris, photo safaris, and that's great, but it doesn't contribute to the economy the way safari hunting does. Namibia, on the other hand, had an unfortunate war with South Africa with a good outcome. The outcome was that Namibia won their independence from South Africa, and the people who were in charge said, we're not going to follow that Kenya example. What we're going to do is we are going to set up conservancies, and the conservancies are going to be owned. Some are owned by tribes, some are owned by investors, some are owned by people that have lived there for several generations with some German background in them. And the conservancies are huge. The one that we were on was 25,000 acres. And they are in charge of keeping their animal population up so that it can be hunted. And when it is hunted, the meat, of course, is all used. It goes either to the running of the business on the conservancy or to the local indigenous tribe. Or if it's an indigenous conservancy, then, of course, they take care of the meat and give it out or sell it in some cases. So it's a booming business. The animals become assets, and it's in everyone's interest to take care of them. And it's worked extremely well.
Yeah, it's interesting, that North American model of conservation and how it is applied and how other places can pick it up. Once you commoditize something and you realize that it's a resource and there's a scarcity to it, all of a sudden the idea of conserving that becomes first and foremost. It gives it value. And, if you outlaw hunting, the poachers will go around. All of a sudden that life really it lacks the value that it has when you're hunting. And I've got friends who do security and work over in South Africa. And, I remember we're having sushi over here in Delta, and a guy gets a text message come in, and he looks at this, makes kind of a funny face and puts it down. I was like, what was that about? He's like, oh, there's some poachers they caught over in fellow's property that he knows of. And really? And he's yeah, and he shows you the picture, and there's 3 guys that just killed him. And that's what they do with poachers over there. They just very, very ruthless justice. Now, it creates a very different system when you bring that value for the life of the animal out of it. And it's kind of like life and death, right? Death is what gives life value. When we start looking at these animals and our resources as something that is going to be, I guess, a commodity, all of a sudden it gets respected in a different way. At least that's my observation. And when reading through your book, I see some of the work, Dave, that you've done in the past on killing, bleeding over into this. And I see a parallel between a number of these ideas. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this really is. You can't understand killing, you can't understand combat until you understand hunting. So on killing, for example, if you go to Google Scholar, scholar.google.com, and you look up any work and see how many times it's been cited in scholarly works. And I was at this thing where this one academic guy was retiring, and they said his papers have been cited over 200 times. I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Throughout his lifetime, his stuff has been, well, what about my stuff? So I went to google.scholar.com, and On Killing alone has been cited over 3,600 times. Well, that's what On Hunting is going to be.
Wow.
It's going to be that level of scholarly dynamic, and Linda's laid that foundation. She did her lit review, she put it all together. But here's the heart of the matter. That crazy American who will pay, well, what's the record, Linda? $250,000 to go over and shoot that lion. And here's the key, he's at the end of his life cycle anyway. And oh, by the way, death by old age and nature is a horrible, hideous, slow death as you're eaten alive by rodents and insects. Nobody puts you, unless there's a predator there, to put you out of your mercy, out of your, we had one part in there where a guy said as they watched a calf wildebeest being killed and eaten alive on this photo safari, within 30 seconds, everybody on the safari was screaming, put him out of his mercy, put him out of his misery. And that's the ethical kill of the hunter at the end of the life cycle. And that pays for all of the game wardens you would ever need to protect that game. This is so important to get across, is what we're doing. So killing, as you said, is commoditized. But they're going to die. They're at the end of the life cycle. It's a slow, hideous death. And we can get value from that death. We honor that creature. We honor their memory. And the money goes back into the community. It's brilliant, and I never saw that coming. And Linda and Keith in their own safaris had really given great information to make that come alive. Does that tie in, Keith? From your perspective of that?
I'm sure. Was there a question? I have trouble hearing Keith. I have trouble hearing Dave, so I'm not sure if there was a question in there for me.
Yeah,
just you've been around gunfire too long, Keith.
Thank you for that compliment. What was the question?
Just what you had to add into that equation of the hunting and your experiences in Namibia, and how it kind of framed this model of the economics of the hunter in the modern world.
It was incredibly obvious when you go and hunt on those conservatories and deal with the PHs and all of their trackers, exactly how that model is playing out. And it was just so obvious. It would be good if our own lawmakers here were to see that sort of stuff. One of the things that really stuck in my mind is the PH told us of a drought that was going on in the land. And the animals on his conservatory, 25,000 acres, were starving to death. And so he had to bring in feed, and it wasn't a lot. It was just enough to try to keep them going. He had to bring in feed and feed the animals until the next rain came. And it was hunters that backed him on that with money. There wasn't one anti-gunner, one greenie, one anybody else at all that helped them with that. Except the hunters. And I think that says a whole lot right there. We're the ones that give a damn.
Amen. And these
why do you think that is? Because there's nothing... Oh, I was going to say, why do you think that is? Because there's nothing stopping the bird watcher from buying a migratory bird tag. There's nothing stopping the hiker or the photographer from going out and contributing to conservation in the exact same way that hunters do.
Well, I think that...
Why is it the hunters?
Well, I think it is because if anti-hunter goes out and buys a tag, the concept is that he's supporting hunting. And in fact, if it was to ever get out that if they wanted to reduce the number of animals killed in a hunt, all they got to do is go out and buy every tag that's available out there. But we won't let that get out.
Some do that.
We won't let that get out.
Sometimes they do that. for example, when the grizzly bear hunt in British Columbia was permissible. Right now, it currently isn't. There are indigenous groups that are like, they're saying, look, at the conservation of our grizzly population is not being addressed properly. And we are now taking matters into our own hands, and we are initiating culls or putting bounties on the grizzlies. I mean, the idea of this feel good, live and let live, and everything lives, it sounds good in theory, but the reality of humanity in recorded history would say that it doesn't play out in the practical world, and there's probably a reason why. Like maybe the life-death cycle and that struggle, both in the human sense as well as with animals, is just an innate part of us. And I think you guys touch on that in a way in the book. That's really intriguing.
Well, I think the anti-hunters just simply don't know what they don't know. They're a very emotional bunch, and they go off in that tangent. They don't look into it. They don't study it. They just don't know what they don't know. They figure, well, you're killing animals. You must be doing it all wrong. Well, they're wrong. There's more conservation from us hunters than they ever thought of providing.
How do we get that message to them? How do we get that message in a way where everyone's pushing together because we've got the same goals. We all want to see the animals. We all want to. It's not, as Shane Mahoney would say, that we have dominion over the animals. It's that we are one of them, and we all work together in a certain way. And I believe that the anti-hunters and the hunters both want that same goal of having our ecosystem, having natural resources, having the animals around, but we're approaching it from two different ways. How do we kind of get in the same line?
I think we got to pursue exactly what we're doing. I think they pursue it from the emotional side, and of course the hunters pursue it from the scientific side. We got lots of biologists out there that are saying the way it needs to be done, and I think we just need to, steer the steady course and keep doing that. And you hear a little bit less. I don't think I hear so much protesting as there used to be. And I think a lot of the protesters are maybe starting to have a bit of this scientific logic dribble into their little brains, and it may be starting to show up just a little wee bit now. And I think if we just keep on doing it, there's lots and lots of good models out there. Africa it has lots of good models on how it happens. Here in North America, we've got more deer, moose, and elk than we ever had. In the last 100 years, it's working. And I think we just got to stay the course. Educate them whenever we can.
Well, when is the last time that rational... Oh, sorry, Dave, go on.
No, I was going to say, if we could just write a really powerful book on this subject, a book that hunters could say, here, read this and you'll understand. If we could just... If somebody would just write this book... And then hunters can grab this book and shove it at them and say, here, read this. Now you'll understand. If only somebody could just write that book.
Well,
yes?
I think one of the things we have to be a little careful about is that the hunters is fewer than 10%. The anti-hunters, as far as we can figure, are something fewer than 5%. In between are a whole bunch of non-hunters. For a vast number of reasons, they just don't hunt. And we spent the last week doing an audiobook with a fellow who fell in that category. And he was absolutely educated, moved, astonished, and said he felt blessed. It was a life-changing event for him to listen to our book. So I think it's that vast middle group that we can reach and get some effective traction.
I didn't realize those numbers. I didn't realize from the way that the anti-hunters speak and have their voice heard, you would think they far outweigh the lowly hunters here, the few, far and few between. I didn't realize that hunters almost double anti-hunting. That's interesting.
Well,
the
and the huge number of votes and determination and strength are with the non-hunters. And they're a much more amenable group to our message.
I can't think of the last time when I've been able to use rational, logical thought to combat an emotional argument. And I think that's where the campfire stories, like what you're contributing there, Keith, are extremely important, because humans are storytellers at heart. I mean, we are drawn to the story. We're drawn to the visual story, the audio story, the whatever it might be. And sitting around a campfire is as old as fire itself. I mean, soldiers, they would talk about having Hexy TV, right, which is the little hexamine tablets, and they sit there watching that thing, zoning out, and it's a bit of an escape. And the Hexy TV, combining that with the stories of how things have been done in the past, is the traditional way how we've always carried that information forward. And I think you guys are probably touching on that key piece, because the emotional argument side doesn't want to listen to facts. But if you can touch that emotional side through the story that incorporates those facts, I think that's probably the best possible solution here.
I think you can start most discussions with the anti-hunters with 3 words: Kenya and Namibia. Go off and study those two from a hunting point of view, and you'll see the difference. And then you can stick our book in their face, or maybe even slap them with it.
But the other powerful component that I didn't see coming until we all got together and did it was this audiobook. I don't think there's ever been an audiobook like it. Keith was reading the summaries and the forewords and then a chapter title, a subtitle, a section title. So, and then he read the campfire stories. And then, all these wonderful, wonderful quotes that Linda had pulled together, the best words from the best people. She read all the quotes, and then I read, kind of the text in between. And so there's all of us. But what's really cool is the guy who did the recording, he was doing all kinds of outtakes. We would say, oh, by the way, here's what happened here, and we'd laugh about this, and we'd fumble over this. And so this may be the first audiobook ever done with an outtakes reel that allows people to dig deep. It's just so much fun. You got to listen to the audio. It's going to be fun, and it will be part of the tool that allows us to get this information in their hands. You go for a drive, you plug in an audiobook, and you listen an hour a day during your commute. At the end of this book, you will be informed and transformed. And again, with Keith's, those campfire stories and those great quotes, it comes together to form something very powerful.
I think those outtakes are important too, because it humanizes you.
Yeah.
Instead of that professional at the other end of the microphone that's just relaying information, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, they're imperfect just like me, or they can make mistakes or get upset or flub things just like me. And that humanizing process is something that I see modern social media and the way that people communicate. It seems to be have a dehumanizing approach to it, and it creates an us against them sort of mentality. And when we can start looking at people that we would say as the opposition or the other side, and realize that their goals and intentions by and large will align very much with our own, and one-on-one dealing with them, they're pretty darn good people.
Yes. Yes.
We just seem to differ on a few different ways of application. That humanization is hugely important.
From the perspective of that, tell them about...
So we're talking
Linda,
about ethics.
Yeah. Linda, tell them about on-runting.
I can't remember what I said. I said something about on-runting. It seemed right to me at the time. And Keith came back with what?
Let's write a book on rutting. It seemed funnier at the time. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So it's
as you're knee deep in all this stuff, and after a full long week of recording the audio, let's write our next book.
on runting.
You'll hear more details in the outtakes.
So ethics, you brought those up as one of the important pieces of the puzzle in here. So ethics, I always remember, because we hold the contract for online hunter education in British Columbia. One of the things that the province wants BC residents to know is the difference between morals and ethics, and how ethics apply and how morals apply. And, ethics are external, morals are my own, right? Ethics are something that's kind of everyone agrees on together, and morals are something that I will hold to myself, and it's a standard that I need to be able to meet. So ethics are going to change depending on where we are. People will have different ethics in different areas of the world that the culture and the group hold things perhaps a little bit differently. What was the take in the book on ethics? Was it thought to try and systemize ethics, and so everyone's basically on the same page?
Not at all. Not at all. No.
Okay.
It's more an explanation of what ethics is, what some types of ethics are. So some people think they're being ethical if they follow all the rules, and some people think they're ethical if they're one step closer to God. Do you know what I mean? Like they're
yes.
Yeah. It's a very, very different kind of set of ethics, and most people subscribe to a few ethics from half a dozen different types of ethics. And you're exactly right. They're culturalized, so it isn't one size fits all at all. You really need to come to terms with your own moral behavior. And I guess my favorite line in the book on that is that morals and ethics are the things that you do when nobody's watching.
Right.
But that brings us back to something really important. Was that hunter's oath. Talk about that, Linda. So there is this, with all that said, there's still that hunter's oath that you introduced that's so powerful.
Yeah, and that's Keith's bailiwick.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have it memorized, and I was just looking around here to see if there was a copy. Linda has the copy in there, and the hunter's oath is in there someplace, and it's a good sort of general statement to follow from an ethics point of view. Linda's looking for it.
Well, perhaps I add that to the description, and what we do here on the video and the audio format, and people can have a copy of the Hunter's Oath that they can kind of look at. But if that's all right with you guys,
you bet.
But maybe we just talk about it generally.
And it wraps up. The book wraps up with the Hunter's Prayer, which is also another. It actually began, as I understand, the Sniper's Prayer, and it evolved into this Hunter's Prayer, and that's another one about Linda and Keith's amazing contributions to the community.
We've got a book on the go right now called The Sniper's Prayer, and Linda wrote in the back the Sniper's Prayer, what's amazing about that, of course, is that Linda was never a sniper. She was never in the military, and yet she captured the whole essence of what it's like to be a sniper. Well, there's a very similar, very thin line between being a sniper and being a hunter. And so she changed the words slightly and turned it into the Hunter's Prayer, and that's in the book as well. And they're just amazing. Did you find the oath there, Linda?
I did find the oath. Do you want me to read it?
Yes, please.
I can do that. I have the capability. The Hunter's Oath by Captain Keith A. Cunningham. I pledge on my honor as a hunter to follow the laws of nature, always to hunt ethically, and to obey the laws of the land. I further pledge to develop and maintain the skills required to develop an effective and humane shot to my quarry. I promise to always do everything within my power to recover my game animal and use it with respect for the life given.
Oh, I like that.
And
it's so simple, and it wraps up what a hunter is very succinctly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because anyone outside of that is a poacher.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
I mean,
sorry?
Go on, Linda.
If you're not following all of those elements, you might want to just take a little look inside next time you're sitting in a tree stand and wondering what you need to be spending your time on. Just take a look at that oath and see if you have done everything, all of those elements, as well as you want to.
It's very easy for people to get caught up in the competition of it all, right? When they spend so much money to get their kit and gear, when they spend so many seasons chasing game and being unsuccessful, when they travel to a remote location, or they take time off of work, and they start getting the goal for people can quite often be the animal. I've got to get this animal. And sometimes otherwise ethical people, or people that you would view as ethical, can get caught up in the excitement or the competition or the ego or whatever it might be of the moment, and really challenge what their core beliefs are. And I remember, any hunter out there who's been hunting for some time will have a story of when their ethics are put to the test, when their morals are put to the test, and how they responded to that. I remember even just last season, a friend of mine says, let's go out. Neither of us were able to get a draw in BC for a bull moose, but they've got an open season in this one area for spike fork, so they've got to have a maximum of 2 on one side, and let's see what we can do. And we were putting in long hours, trekking through swamps, and covering tons of territory on a side-by-side, tons of territory by foot. And anyways, one evening we're driving back to base camp, going out the hill. We're about half a kilometer away from base camp, and what do we see? 2 moose skedaddling up the road. And first thing you go is like, holy crow, look at that. You look, and that's a spike fork. It's illegal. It's a legal animal that we are allowed to harvest. We're allowed to take. And you're looking at this and look at the watch, and it's like, no, we're about 5 minutes after last light. Can't do it. But for a lot of people, they would say, who's going to know? Nobody's going to see this, right? The problem is, you take that, and the worst part about these 2 moose was we sat down, we looked at each other, and said, no, it's after last light. We can't do it. Let's just let them skedaddle. So we wait, and they go around the corner. We give them about 20 minutes or so because they were kind of going slow. We go around the corner, and there they are still, like they just weren't going. And we've been searching forever for these things. But the problem is, you go home, are you going to enjoy that? Are you going to be able to tell that story afterwards around the campfire and say, oh, that one time we were able to shoot those animals after last light? Are you going to, every time you eat it, you're going to remember the time that you were a poacher and not a hunter? It's just not worth it.
Yep. You're an ethical hunter, sir.
Well, there's always going to be times when those ethics are put to the test, right? And it's in those moments that you can then turn around afterwards and be proud of yourself and share that experience with others and share it with your family and your children, and hopefully that bleeds off into others, and you build an environment of people who are sharing those same core values.
What was that saying the other day, Dave? Somebody said, you don't convert people by evangelism, you convert people by your own behavior.
Yeah, better to live the sermon than to preach it.
There it is. Yeah.
What was it? Better to what?
Better to live the sermon than to preach it.
Oh, yeah. I 1,000% believe that. The example is the best way of leadership, right? Everyone has that rules for thee, or rules for you, but not for thee. And
Yeah.
when they talk about politicians, the ones that we truly admire and truly respect are the ones who will actually walk the walk, and they will do what they say. And maybe not so much out there preaching to everyone else, telling them what's up and how to do it, but you can see through their example that they're living the lifestyle that you aspire to. That's one of the things in this book that I would imagine would be a difficult thing, because if you're coming across as an authority and you're trying to provide the information, is to walk that delicate tightrope of telling people what's up with a wagging finger and laying out information on the table for them to be able to make a decision from.
Actually, it's pretty easy.
Well, I think you guys made it look easy.
We went through a voyage of discovery, and if you remember your own voyage, it's very much easier to tell the story in a way that other people can share your voyage rather than you telling them where they have to moor the boat.
So when we look at hunting, and over in North America, this is predominantly, there's a term that another fellow who runs a business here in Vancouver, he taught me about. He calls them GOWDs, G-O-W-Ds. I'm like, what is a gout? He's like, it's a grumpy old white dude. Right? and that's the stereotypical hunter of the past, is this grumpy old white dude. Like, you can't come on this area. This is my land. This is my area. I've been hunting it all this time. And they're trying to take away my rights, and there's this negative connotation associated with hunting by a lot of anti-hunters and new people getting into hunting as well. There's a barrier to entry. And one thing that I was talking about with the executive director of the Wildlife Federation in the podcast that just released recently was how the face of hunting is changing and the demographics are changing, and the way that we are able to incorporate traditional belief systems and values into all of those who are getting in, who come from different backgrounds and different ways of life. And I think the future of hunting, as it's being approached currently, is actually looking pretty optimistic. But I'd be curious, after all of the research you've done on hunting, what does the future of hunting look like to you?
I think there's enough biological or biologists out there who are preaching the importance of hunting. I think it's got legs yet. I don't think the Greens are and anti-hunters are loud enough yet, or to take that away from us. I think it has a future. I think it'll continue for generations yet. And that might be me wishful thinking, but I think that's. I also am very hopeful that we'll vote Trudeau out next go around too. And so, if we just think positively enough about it all, it just may come to pass.
Well, you and the majority of other Canadians, according to recent polls,
yes,
Keith.
Yes, thank goodness.
And I see that the Liberals.
I did some research.
Go ahead, Linda.
I did a lot of research of trends around the world. And what I found, now it was hard to get really recent numbers because we were in the middle of a pandemic and nobody was doing anything, including gathering stats. They were busy taking care of the home fires. But the trend since certainly the early 2010s or so has been for hunting numbers to be increasing in most areas around the world, and for the percentage of females hunting to be increasing. Now, there's a huge barrier to entry for women, and it's not what you might think. It's that they don't know how to get started. They don't know where to go to get started. So we do have some suggestions in the book. There are some universities running courses. There are, in fact, one of our dear friends just started hunting by going and getting a guided hunt. Now, it was for turkey. It wasn't an expensive hunt, but it gave her an opportunity to be schooled in some of the ways of hunting that you don't necessarily get from reading a book or trying to figure out what your granddad might have been doing with that old gun. So I think there's a lot of hope. I honestly, in complete candor and humility, think that the On Hunting book will give support to those people so that they'll see that, yeah, I'm part of a growing community here. I'm not a freak. This is really something that's right for people to do, and really right for women to do, to get involved in. So I'm also optimistic.
I think it's interesting. Linda talked about
some of, if not the.
Linda talked about an anti-hunter online, and he said, "Well, I support the World Wildlife Foundation, and I contribute to them." And well, guess what? They support hunting as a part of conservation, and that's a victory. Mm-hmm. That their official position supports hunting as part of conservation. I got the little stuffed panda, and I support the animals, and WWF, is that right? Is that right, Linda? Did I get that right?
Yeah, WWF.
I didn't realize that they were supporters of hunting.
Yes. Yeah, they aren't as noisy about it the last couple of years as they have been in the past, but they have stood with hunting and hunters because they see what the economics are. The money comes from the hunters and the animals benefit, and they get that because that's what their mission is.
I think from a societal standpoint, when we looked at the last few years going through the COVID lockdowns and pandemic and all the rest that associated with that, there was a rekindled fire in people to want to get outdoors, to want to learn some traditional skills, to be self-sufficient, and that combined with the movement, the food movement of knowing where your food comes from, local sustainable food. And I think the pendulum of moving away from hunting, I think the pendulum is starting to swing a bit because people are having a difficult time trusting where their food, the chemicals that might be used and how the farms are treating the animals that they might be getting. And they're looking at the hunting for more than just that one split second when the trigger is pulled or the arrow is let loose. Hunting is everything that surrounds that. It's a lifestyle of being in tune with the nature, of being in tune with the animals, of being in tune with the seasons and there's a very natural part to the human condition that I think is drawn towards that. I think we're moving away from this everything comes in processed food or here's one pill you can take a day and you get all your vitamins and nutrients from it. And I think people are realizing the sort of spiritual side of just being out and communing with nature that's associated with hunting. And most people will never, if they haven't hunted, will not experience the range of emotions and connectedness to their natural environment like those who do hunt.
100%.
Amen.
There's a quote that you guys have in the book that I really liked. Let me see if I can pull that up really quick. And it's, here it is. It says, one of the delights of hunting is getting mentally and emotionally lost in nature. It is a total absorption in the present moment. The reality of everyday anxiety fades, and the hunter becomes immersed in the natural world. He feels connected to something much bigger than himself. Can you guys talk a bit more on that? Like, what is that to you?
That's what it's all about. That's the hunter who goes out on the first day of the season, sees the kind of animal that is perfect for him to take, and doesn't take it because he doesn't want the hunt to be over in less than 24 hours. He wants to hold on to that feeling for as long as he can, and yes, get his game animal if he can, but it's being there for that feeling that puts him in the bush and keeps him coming back.
I think I agree with Linda, although there certainly has been times when I have spent lots and lots of cold, wet, miserable days out there and not seen anything, that I am sometimes fearful not to take the first one, the first good one that comes along. You know, the old saying,
Yep.
don't bypass on the first day the one you'd take on the last day. So there is that to it, but certainly being out in the wilderness, being out in the bush, as I've often said, I get a much more spiritual feeling being out in the bush than I ever did when my grandmother used to drag me to church and make me sit in the shadow of stained glass and hardback seats. If I could. I really like the religion that the natives had, where everything had a spirit out in the bush, and that's where I'm certainly most at peace out there.
You know, I think.
How about you, Dave?
Yeah, one of the pathologies of modern life is thinking that you don't have to kill. You're taking yourself out of the natural cycle of life. It's a deep pathology. Well, you know, I'm vegan. Well, we exterminate billions of rats and mice around the granaries every year. Otherwise, they would get in the granaries and they would reproduce exponentially and we would all starve. Your body right now is killing billions of microorganisms. When you stop doing that, your body rots and dies. To live is to kill, and to think that you don't have to kill because you buy it packaged in the store or you get it secondhand and I'm a vegan, right? But all of these creatures had to die, and all of this piece of land had to be turned into farmland so that you could be a vegan. Yet to live is to kill. And so hunters are into, you say, oh, I can be spiritual, I can be in the woods, I can identify. No. If you're not part of that cycle of life, and that's one of the things that Linda has nailed over and over again, if you're not part of that cycle of life, and hunters truly understand death, that deer died so I can live, and I will die, and I will be worm food someday, and that's okay. You know, one of the things well, how would you like to be eaten? Well, you will be. you just don't know it.
Yeah. Something's going to consume you, right? Ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
Amen.
What would you guys view as a success for this book? Once it's done, you know, number of copies sold, messages received, what would be the ultimate success once this book is out into the general public for you?
I think if we could get more people thinking the way our sound engineer has, where he is a non-hunter. He's certainly not against hunting. He just didn't do it. And he explained to us in incredibly wonderful terms just what this book has done for him. And he listened to it. He got emotional at the parts that we intended people to get emotional at. And he absorbed that book. And it has turned him around. And I think if we could get, and Linda mentioned that crowd before, the non-hunters is a much bigger group than either the anti-hunters or the hunters. And if we get more people of the non-hunting to read that book and just simply understand where we're coming from, I think that would be a great, great success. Just more of what Rick did.
Yep, I agree with that. One of the fellas that kindly read through the manuscript, it was right near the last draft, who's a non-hunter, but a very meticulous person. He read through it and he came back and said, you could call this book On Humans instead of On Hunting, because it's really about every one of us. And every person that reads it, that comes away with that in their mind, success.
You know, Travis, I co-authored a book on gun control with Glenn Beck called Control, The Truth About Guns. New York Times bestseller. Not one single review. Nobody, nowhere. They just give it zero oxygen. And the point is that we've got to have hunters that are inflicting this book on non-hunters. We've got to create a buzz. We've got to create an energy. And we've got this tool that we can place in their hands, but they've got to turn around and have your kids read it, have your relative read it, and we got to get through that. You know, when you write about hunting, when you write about guns, they will automatically censor it, and they give it zero oxygen. So all the hunters out there and all the people who love our way of life and understand what it's about, they've got to become, they've got to become missionaries. And it's you're preaching to the choir. When you preach to the choir, you get missionaries. So let's go out there and evangelize for our faith, which is as Keith said, is out there in the forest, being a part of that food cycle. And this is the tool that you can use to make that transition to be the evangelist, the missionary that will take our faith and our beliefs and put it in the hands of others so they understand it and embrace that dynamic. And it truly will bring you deeper into understanding of humanity. Even if you never hunt, even if you never have hunted, this book will give you far, far deeper understanding of our humanity, who we are, what we do, and our place in the world. So success would be all those hunters out there grabbing this book and creating buzz about it and talking on Facebook and talking online and wonderful, wonderful podcasts like yours, picking up on this and help us get the word out.
You know, as you're talking there, I get this image of people not in white shirts and black ties, but dressed up in camouflage, 2x2, going through neighborhoods, knocking on doors. Have you heard the good word? Hold it up. Hold it up on hunting.
That's outstanding. Maybe they won't get the door slammed in their faces often.
Oh, man. Is there anything that we should be talking about that we haven't already talked about before we wrap things up? Okay, well, I tell you what, I'm going to make sure we have links to where people can buy the book, where they can find out more information on the book. We'll put this, it's going to be up on YouTube, it'll be up on the podcast. Linda, Keith, Dave, thank you so very much for taking the time to write this book and for taking the time to be on the Silvercore podcast to talk about it. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Travis.
Thank you, Travis, for all you do.
Amen.